Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Laura Froyen with Lunch Break with Laura. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're coming off of a week of hearings around the sexual assaults that happened 30 years ago and was perpetrated or supposedly perpetrated by one of our judicial candidates. And I don't typically like to get political on this show. I think those of you who know me in person probably know where my politics lie, but I actually don't think that there is anything political about teaching children consent. I think that that's a pretty human topic and doesn't lean one way or another in terms of politics. And so I really do want to leave the politics out of it today and just go to the human need for dignity and respect, because that is a basic human right and a basic human need to be treated with dignity and respect. And so again, I don't think that's political. We're not getting political today, but I did just want to kind of put it out there in the context. I know it's been a hard week for me as a survivor of rape myself. And as a survivor, this is something that I've focused on with my children since birth. I wanted them to grow up knowing that they had a right to their body, that they had inherent worth and inherent dignity as human beings, that their no was powerful, their stop meant something. And so this is one of my biggest soapbox issues. So I would, it looks to me like everybody's saying that yes, consent should be taught from birth. And so that's my first, I want to dive in there today on talking about when we start teaching consent. And I really think that it starts at birth. Even as young babies, when we're changing diapers, we can let a baby know, a newborn infant can start participating right away in things that happen to their body. We can let them know what's happening to their body. We can ask for permission. We can ask for their involvement and really start teaching that from birth. As children age, continuing to ask permission before touching or showing affection, encouraging them to learn how to ask permission too. May I have a hug, before just reaching in and grabbing one. And when they are old enough to start saying no or start indicating resistance, when you accept their no. There are absolutely times when we can't accept a no, like when we're at the doctor and a procedure has to be done, or if they have a dirty diaper that must be changed, or their bottom will be chafed. There are definitely times when we can't accept a no. And in those times, we empathize with their position. We validate that they wish that this wasn't happening and that we're doing it to keep them safe. And we explain as much as we can. And then afterwards, we comfort. But as a child ages, those should become less and less and less. And more time should be spent up front preparing a child for like a medical procedure, or maybe getting dressed if it's very, very dangerously cold outside, and holding those boundaries verbally beforehand before physically having to enforce something. So again, asking permission right from and being respectful of their voice right from the very start. When a child experiences how powerful their no can be, it teaches them to respect that no in return. I also think it's important to start that process with yourself right from the start too. So things like pulling hair, which lots of babies do, or if you're nursing, biting while nursing, those are sometimes the first opportunity we have to teach a child about respect for bodily autonomy and about our physical boundaries and our no. And that is just as powerful as teaching that their no is going to be respected. Respecting our no is equally important, and it's a fabulous opportunity to teach about physical boundaries within the context of a loving, compassionate relationship. So that can be done, having a really clear boundaries about it. If a baby is pulling hair, carefully unclasping their hair. I don't want you to pull my hair. I'm going to help you take your hand off. Being really clear about that. Um, and so I was super curious about, for those of you who've answered this question, who have been teaching consent and respect from birth, I would love to hear if you have any stories or little nuggets to share with us about how you've been doing that. I think hair pulling and biting while nursing were my biggest ones that were centered around my body, but it's something that still comes up every day for me. Like last night at the dinner table, my girls were fighting over who got to put their feet on my leg and use my leg as a footrest. And it started to feel very intrusive and not comfortable for me. And so I set a very clear boundary. I do not want my body to be fought over. I'm going to move my legs now. And I moved them, and they weren't happy with it, but they don't have to be happy. They don't have to like that boundary. It's okay for them not to be happy. And learning that and modeling that for them, like being okay with someone else's emotions around the boundary that you've put up, modeling that is really powerful. And that brings us to the next kind of idea that we can do by starting from birth, is not forcing affection. Not forcing our affection on our child, and not forcing them to demonstrate or show affection to anyone else that they don't want to. I know when I was a child, I was made to give and receive kisses that I did not want, and I was the option of saying no wasn't there. I was made responsible for adults' feelings and emotions. Was anybody else show me your hands or loves, or if you were forced to give affection, forced to give hugs and kisses when you were little? Does anybody remember this, or am I alone? Yes, so hugs, kisses, I definitely had that experience. And I know it seems small and mundane, and I know it's a cultural thing that maybe has shifted quite a bit since I was a kid, but it taught me something. It taught me that my no wasn't to be listened to, that my feelings of discomfort were something that I should push to the side, and that I was responsible for someone else's feelings. That when someone felt rejected, that I was responsible for soothing that and making sure they didn't feel rejected. And that's a lot to put on a kid, and that's not appropriate. For our children, and in my family, our little ones, they never have to give a hug or a kiss. They don't have to give a high five. They never have to use their body to show affection that they aren't feeling. And in a way that makes them uncomfortable and that they don't want to do. Heck, I don't even make them say hi to people that they're uncomfortable saying hi to, because we don't owe people anything. And I want my girls to know that if someone says hi to you on the street and you're uncomfortable, you don't have to say hi back. I think that girls especially are taught to be polite, and that's very, very, in circumstances where they're uncomfortable, and are taught to be polite so that they don't make someone else uncomfortable. And that's very, very early grooming to be really good targets for like things like catcalling and that type of thing. So I teach our kids that they don't have to do that. And so no forced affection is a good way to start teaching consent. And the next one is teaching children about their power words. That's what we call them here. And power words are no and stop. And those two words are always obeyed and listened to. And we do that ourselves. So if we're maybe having a wrestling game or a tickling game and we're tickling, the first second there's a no or a stop, even if it's in laughter, said with a happy face, we stop immediately. And we don't start again until our children request it to start again. And we also enforce that going the other way. So if our kids are wrestling with us and one of the adults isn't enjoying it and we say stop, we stop immediately. And we also teach this actively to our children to work together on. So if one says no or stop, it's done and over with. It doesn't matter if it was fun. It doesn't matter if they said yes 2 seconds ago. Once the stop is out of mouth, it's done. And we teach this with our nieces and nephews when they come over and play, and we teach it with friends. And it's a kind of a universal rule in our home that no means no and stop means stop, and that's it. There's no middle ground for it. So Nikki says, it was hard for my daughter's grandparents that we don't force her to hug or kiss if she says no, but they came around and now they respect that too. Oh, Nikki, I'm so glad you're doing that. I think it's hard on the older generation too. And there was definitely some pushback in my family too, on both sides. But I think that they all agree now that this is the way to move. This is the way our culture is moving. Let's see. Anne says, I was always an enthusiastic affection giver when I was a kid, but my older daughter is not. And I appreciate how all the adults in our lives respect that she doesn't always want a hug or whatever. Oh, yes. Yeah, good. I'm so glad that Kaya has that experience, Anne. So yes, I see a question coming in from Kenzie. How do you respectfully teach this rule to people who enter your home? Well, it depends on who the person is. So if it's a friend, I actually cultivate my children's friends pretty well, and most of them have the same views. And then I do this through modeling. Usually if I'm greeting someone coming into my home, maybe the stop. Well, I'll tell about both of them. And their child comes in, and I will kind of respectfully say hi, and then I'll let them know, you don't have to say hi to me. I'm a new person. You'll say hi when you're ready, so that there's very low or no pressure. When the kids start playing together, I just say the rule, and no parent has ever disagreed with me on the stop means stop and the no means no. So we just sit down, and as the kids are getting ready to play, I just say, I want to remind you all that you guys can play rough and have lots of fun, but if anytime anyone says no or stop, then we stop right away. And if you can't stop, if you're too caught up in it, there's always a grown-up who will help you stop yourself. Because that's the other thing, that with young children especially, they have underdeveloped brains and self-regulation systems. And sometimes when they get caught up, they literally can't stop themselves. And that's what a loving parent or adult figure is for, so that they can step in and help them stop themselves. They can come in and gently, calmly, not an emergency, come in and help them, physically touch them. Emma said stop. I'm going to help you stop now. She does not like that. She's done. And help stop. And it can be very loving, very gentle, but I'm going to help your body. I'm going to help your body to stop. Because sometimes they do get overwhelmed and they can't stop. They're kind of just too caught up in it. So yeah, but I've never had a parent disagree with that rule. But that's a really great question, Kenzie. Oh, wait, I'm still on no and stop. So I feel like lots of people talk about the magic word, and that often is please in a lot of houses. But for us in our house, the only magic word is, or I guess thank you, please and thank you are the magic words. But in our house, the only magic words are no and stop, and they always work. Again, and that goes both ways. And we actually play games to practice this. We will play like the no game or a tickling game where they get practice hearing the word stop and stopping. So it's kind of like red light, green light, which is a great self-regulation game. You can play a self-regulation game with the words no and stop too, to help pair it in their brain that when I say no, that means I freeze my body. Or when I hear no, that means I stop. Or if I hear the word stop, that correlates to me stopping my body, or corresponds actually to me stopping my body. And so you can start pairing them in their brain so that no and stop mean something physically. And so having a tickling game where you use different faces, like, so if I'm smiling and say stop, they still stop. Or if I'm frowning and say stop, they stop. And they're tickling you and you're the person saying stop. And then you can switch roles where they're saying stop in lots of different ways. So this can be a really fun game that kids like to play. Tickling games are lots of fun. And they also are learning about consent and how they're kind of training their bodies to control themselves better in situations where they might be kind of a little bit over enthusiastic. So the other thing that I would love parents to do is to teach their children about how to read body language and facial cues. So teaching how to notice reluctance or being uncomfortable on the face or in body language is so important. Like today, my daughter, who is 3.5, told me she didn't want to go to school because her friends are always touching her. and there's two friends who are just very affectionate kids, and they like to, rub each other's arms and stuff. And so I talked with Evie about it, and empowered her to say, I asked her first what she does, and she says she walks away and plays with someone else, which is great. Yay, Evie. But then I also encouraged her to use her voice and to say, no, I don't like that, or don't touch me. And then when we got to school today, her good friend ran up and started rubbing her arm, and it was in a sweet, affectionate, like she was very happy to see her. But in the moment, my daughter pulled away and went, like, it was very subtle. And so in that moment I said, oh, Evie, I see you're pulling away. I don't think you like that touch. I just said it, just noticed it. And the little girl immediately pulled her hand away and said, come on, let's go play. And she immediately stopped touching her. But just as a parent, just noticing and kind of sports casting, kind of being the person who is verbalizing the body language can help children hone in and read the body language of their friends. And then correct kind of their behavior. So teaching to read facial expressions, particularly being able to say, look at his face. He's saying his face is saying he does not like that. His face is saying no, is really important too in setting those. Is anybody here using like body language and teaching facial expressions to their kids? I would love to hear your stories, or if that's working, or if you've had success with that too. I think the most powerful thing you can do when it comes to consent and physical boundaries and bodily autonomy is to be teaching through modeling. So humans are social learners. We learn through observation and through interaction. And one of the best ways we can teach boundaries and consent is through modeling. So that means kind of walking the walk in our lives, and not just with our children, with our partners, with our friends. So if we're greeting a friend, coming up and saying, can I give you a hug today? And then hugging would be a great thing to do. If you have friends who you have an kind of implicit culture with them, maybe that you don't have to do that, but even with your partner. So like when they walk in the door, you can say, oh, can I have a kiss? And they can say yes, and kind of model that kind of enthusiastic consent. So it's not just with your kids, but with everyone. And when, like, if your partner maybe is giving you a back rub, just rubbing your shoulder, and you don't feel like it, you can say, oh, I don't feel like that right now. And they can model not being rejected, happily and lovingly accepting that no. And that's a good thing to model too. So being really cognizant of our responses and the ways that we're modeling these interactions is super important and powerful. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to mention, there's two kind of additional ways that we work on teaching consent here. And one is that I guess this isn't exactly consent, but teaching boundaries. I actively tell my kids that you don't always have to be polite when you're asking for someone to stop touching you. If kids are bugging you, like poking you, and you said stop, you don't have to be polite. You don't have to say stop, please. You don't even have to say no thank you. I think no thank you is like really popular right now in daycares. And I understand it that we want polite kids, but when someone's touching your body in a way you don't like it, you don't have to be polite. And that's basically what I tell my kids. You can say no and use a strong voice, and you don't have to be polite. And the thing is as my kids get older, I know there will be circumstances probably where they will defend themselves. And I think that's pretty great. I want them to feel really confident that if they are defending themselves, I will support them no matter what. There were definitely moments in my early adolescence where I could have and maybe should have defended myself, but I was afraid to get suspended or to get in trouble. And so I really want my kids to know that they will never be in trouble with me if they are setting firm, healthy boundaries about their body and what feels good to them. And the other thing that I like to drive home with my kids is that consent can be withdrawn at any time. So it doesn't matter if your friend liked that game yesterday, they don't have to like it today. It doesn't matter if 5 minutes ago your friend was having fun being chased around the house, now they want to stop, then we stop. It doesn't matter if yesterday I was fine with you braiding my hair, playing with my hair. Today, I'm not, and I don't want it. And that's my choice because it's my body. And so that phrase, my body, my choice, is something we hear a lot. And I think a lot of parents probably have this experience of that coming back on you sometimes when you're like, it's time to get dressed. And they say, no, I don't want to. It's my body, my choice. And honestly, like, I know that can be annoying, but how amazing is that for kids to know it's their body and it's their choice? I think that's wonderful. So I love hearing that from my kids, even though in the moment it can be a little annoying, but I know I'm doing something right too. So let's see. Tiffany says, how would you approach daycare providers not forcing hugs between kids and between the adult and child in a way that wouldn't cause them to take offense? I would share this video with them or find an article. And maybe, so I know your situation, Tiffany, maybe I would send like an article to the director and just ask, what is your policy on this? And then maybe say, I feel very strongly that affection should not be forced between children or between children and adults. And I would just wondered what you had your policy, what your policy was. So I think in situations like this, kind of gentle curiosity, and like, maybe you don't know all of this information, and I'm curious if you did know it, if things would change. Kind of being really gentle can be helpful. But I could also, I think if I was working in that situation and seeing it happen, I would start maybe stepping in just a smidge earlier, so I got to be the one who was setting the boundary and helping resolve the conflict that was ending in a shared hug. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? Because we are almost done with our time. I'm really working on keeping these brief and to the point and useful. It's already 30 minutes long. I didn't mean for it to be that long today. I think I could talk on this topic for a really long time. All right, I think we're done for today. Please let me know if you have questions. I'll hang around in the comments for the next hour or so. So if you have other questions or ideas that come up afterwards, please let me know. And or you can always PM me or direct message me too. So I hope you're all doing well. It's so nice to be back with Lunch Break, and I'll see you next week.